Path of the Diamond Thunderbolt is looking at the Vajrayana tradition, which doesn't really have so many texts. It's a later Tibetan Tantric school, which is full of and based around myth and symbolism, magic and metaphor. And so far, we've mostly heard of Padmasambhava, the Vajra guru, and we've learned about his life and the myth within his life. We've learned about his radical and liberated views and his lifestyle. And we've seen how we can use the energy that's freed up by his kind of demon-taming, powerful, non-conforming attitude to inspire us in the spiritual life. So we've had 2 talks about Padmasambhava. And tonight we're going to meet and hear about a form of mythical being that can also inspire us in a similar way to shake off habitual ways of being in order to try to get closer to the heart of the truth, to move closer to reality, and to live from that reality. So these beings are the Dakini, and I've written the word up full with what are called the diacritics, which are the dots and the lines. So the Dakini are sky beings or space beings, and a translation for Dakini is naked sky dancer. So that's how we come across the naked sky dancers. So it comes from a Sanskrit root meaning direction, space, or sky. So a sky being or a space being is a being that can move around in empty space free of obstruction. So the sky, you can see the sky as empty space, as emptiness. You might have heard the word shunyata, or you've come across emptiness in the Heart Sutra. So emptiness symbolizes complete potentiality, infinite possibility. And the Dakini can move around in this sky, this empty space, completely free of obstruction, complete freedom of movement. And this isn't in actual space necessarily, but it represents the mind in its absolute aspect. So the Dakini represents the free-moving energies of the mind, a spontaneous movement that is possible within the spiritual life when all of our energies are on board, when all of our energies are available, and when all obstructions have been surpassed. So the Dakini represents spontaneity and unrestricted creativity. And I like to think of this as being like I like to think of spontaneity as important in the spiritual life because it's something that I've come across more and more in my own experience of life since becoming a Buddhist. So as we become more mindful, we don't have to be kind of like mindful robots. You know, we take the cup, we make the tea in the cup, we drink the tea. You know, mindfulness doesn't have to be restricted into kind of boxes like that. Mindfulness can mean more spontaneity, more freedom, more creativity. We can respond to the situations that we're coming across with creativity. Yeah, so the sky is seen as potentiality. The Dakini dances within this with all possibility of infinite movement. We don't need to just sit about in meditation. We can move around, we can use our energy, we can activate our energies in our lives as we go about our daily lives, and we can bring this onto the spiritual path. And this is really important, especially in the Vajrayana tradition. So when I think about this idea of the sky being that dances around, that can move without restriction, have complete spontaneity, complete responsiveness, I do kind of open up into a more broad awareness, an open awareness with greater perspective, greater awareness. And I'm hoping that throughout this talk, as we explore the Dakini more, this breadth of perspective might open up for you. So there's 3 ways that the Dakini or the Dakini principle can present itself to us in our experience. And we're going to look through each one. And the first is in the form of a female Buddha. The second is in the embodiment of our own energy. And the third is in a spiritual friend or companion. So firstly, we're going to look at an actual figure, a female Buddha figure, a Dakini. And we've got this figure on the shrine here. She's only little, but she's extremely beautiful and extremely intricate, and I really recommend that you come up after the talk and have a little closer look at her. So I'm going to introduce you to her, and she's called Vajrayogini. And by looking at this form, we're going to understand more how our own deeper energies are represented by this form, and we'll look at how we can activate our own energies and our own potential. And then later in the talk, we'll look at the third aspect of spiritual friendship. And I'm also going to look at popular culture and see what that has to say about the Dakini principle. And perhaps we can learn more about what a Dakini isn't by looking at that, and therefore learn more about what Dakini is. And then I'll finish by seeing how we might find our own Dakini within. So to the pictures. And I do, like I say, recommend you coming to look at this very intricate. The reason I love this so much, by the way, is it was made by a person in our Sangha, Michael Atkins, made this Vajrayogini. And I just think she's great. So do have a look. But here's an image that you can probably see a little bit more better. So this is Vajrayogini. She's a female Buddha. So you might be a little bit surprised. She doesn't look like the Buddha that we normally see, seated meditation posture, and she's got a lot going on. And I'm going to describe the form a little bit for you, and we'll look at the symbolism of the form. She's also known, I didn't write this up, as Sarva Buddha Dakini, and this means the darkening of all the Buddhas. So in this way, she embodies all of the energies that have carried all of the Buddhas to enlightenment in past, present, and future. She represents how much energy one needs to go through the spiritual life to gain enlightenment. So as you can see, she's standing up, for starters. Her legs are apart. Her back is arched. She's got full breasts and they're thrust out, and her arm is raised. She's got a menacing look, a wrathful smile, and a terrifying gaze. She's brilliantly red and completely naked, except for human bone ornaments, including a garland that she's wearing around her neck, which is made of human skulls. She's got long black hair, which is wildly dishevelled. In her right hand, she holds a Vajra chopper, and this is a sort of knife with a Vajra handle, and we've heard about the Vajra in the previous talks. And in her left, she's got a cup made of a human skull, and this is full of blood, and she's drinking the blood with supreme enjoyment. She's got a third eye in her forehead, and she wears a crown of skulls, and balanced on her shoulder is a staff with a drum and streamers swinging from it, and it's topped with an initiation vase, a double Vajra, and 3 severed heads. Takes a bit of introducing, doesn't she? She's trampling figures beneath her feet, as you can see there. Each one is raising their hands in supplication, kind of begging not to be trampled on, but she's doing it anyway. And the whole naked figure of Vajrayogini is surrounded by flames. So this is Vajrayogini. I've got some more images. This is Vajrayogini flying through space. So as you can see, she's a sky being, surrounded by flames, drinking the blood from the skull cup. And here is the form as she's represented in this Rupa here, where she's actually holding her leg up to represent that she is dancing. And she's still got the Vajra chopper and the skull cup of blood. And there in the face you can see the menacing glare, the third eye, and the crown of skulls. So again, not what you'd expect to see in a representation of the Buddha, representation of enlightenment. But here she is, Vajrayogini. And it's worth just noticing what effect this description has had for you, what effects these images has had for you, before trying to completely understand the symbolism of it in a more cognitive way. And as I said, I'd really recommend coming and looking at this figure. I really enjoyed preparing this talk and having these images up and writing out that description, because I could feel my heart starting to beat a little bit quicker. I could feel the blood starting to rise in my body a little bit. Who knows why, but that was what was happening. So now we've met Vajrayogini, we've met this Dakini form, the form of a female Buddha. Let's consider the symbolism a little bit more and see how it might represent what our freed up energy could look like. So firstly, there's her colour. She's red. Red is the colour of love, of passion, of emotional arousal. She's blushing not just in her face, but in her whole body. She's totally emotionally aroused, and she has full emotional involvement in her spiritual life. For her, her spiritual life isn't just an academic exercise that she does of an evening, but it's a full body, whole life involvement. And that's also why her hair is dishevelled and unkempt. She doesn't care what people think, she doesn't care about decorum, she's just throwing herself in, she's living her spiritual life fully, she's abandoning herself to something beyond herself. So you could say it's a little bit like she's throwing herself into the spiritual life, a little bit like we might throw ourselves into the arms of our lover. We just completely, just no care, complete abandonment into the arms of the lover. And we could think, how much more total would our transformation be if we put as much energy in our own spiritual lives as we did into our romantic lives? So we've probably all got different kinds of romantic lives, But I know for me, the romantic myths played a very, very strong, very important part in my life. And if romance and the spiritual life were a little bit more balanced, had been a little bit more balanced in my life, I think I would have transformed that little bit more. If you got up to meditate in the morning in the same way as you would skip along to your lover, then it would be quite different. So this is important. I think if we can find what we love in the spiritual life and follow it, if we can follow what inspires us and commit to it, devote ourselves to it in the way that we might in romance, then we would have a lot more chance of total transformation. So Vajrayogini represents not being afraid of this emotional commitment to the spiritual life. She represents plunging in and not being afraid to feel something as a result of doing that. Okay, Vajrayogini is also naked, and this represents being naked emotionally, representing truth, honesty, complete open honesty. Yeah, having nothing to hide, just taking away whatever masks or things that we put up in order to hide behind, just taking those away and being completely open and completely honest. So it's a spiritual nakedness, a nakedness of our own emotion. But maybe it could be actual nakedness too. I don't know. Maybe when you go home in the comfort of your own home, safe and secure, you could try out being a little bit naked, see what happens, see how that feels to you to be just kind of away from your clothes and just in the open nakedness of life. And there's a funny story about a poet called Allen Ginsberg who used to talk a lot about the naked truth, the naked reality. And once he was in a public talk and he was talking about this, and an academic asked him, what does that mean? What is naked truth? What's naked reality? What do you mean? And he didn't really know what to say. And he just stripped off. He just took off all his clothes and said, there you go. So I'm not going to do that right now. You'll be maybe, hopefully, relieved to know. I'm not going to strip off. I'm not going to stand here naked. But to illustrate this point, I am just going to stop talking now and just leave a little gap. So it's not what you would normally do in a talk. I felt a little bit uncomfortable. I was a lot more aware of you looking at me, but I was also a lot more aware of you. And maybe we'll carry on that gap a little bit and you can see what you become aware of in the space. Maybe it's uncomfortable, maybe it's just a bit boring. And maybe you could just turn to someone and just take them in a little bit. Have a look at who you're sitting in this room with. Okay, before we either burst into laughter or tears, I'm going to stop that. So that was a little bit different. Some of you might have felt a little bit uncomfortable, some of you might be blushing, I don't know. Some of you might have just thought, what was that about? I don't know. But I was trying to represent that Vajrayogini represents something just completely different. This naked truth, this naked reality, getting outside of what we normally expect to happen into this something that's different to what's acceptable, trying to get to the heart of things, to the heart of the truth, away from the abstract, I'm just talking here, to the concrete, what are we actually doing, who are we actually with. We do these things called communication exercises, which I'm not going to recommend us do now, but on retreats sometimes, you might go to an afternoon session and you'll be sitting facing somebody, like I might with Sangha here, and we just sit in silence and look at each other for 2 minutes, not saying anything. And then we do some nonsense verses to each other. And it's a lot of fun. A lot of people laugh. Some people might cry. Some people run away. But it is a very, it's a traditional and also very effective way of taking away these masks, looking to get to the naked truth, being emotionally open with another being. And it's great afterwards because you can see people who've been doing that just want to chat. And it's a really positive atmosphere afterwards because it's given people the opportunity to just let go of their masks, let go of whatever it is that they use to hide themselves. So Vajrayogini is naked. She's also wearing a necklace of skulls, and this represents the cycle of life, of birth and of death, and how Vajrayogini can cut through this. She dances through the cycle of life and death. She's free from the habits and the vicious circles that we create within our lives. the psychological conditionings, the self-perpetuated problems. So she represents breaking through these cycles with a volcanic surge of energy. And she also has bone ornaments. And the Tantra, the Vajrayana tradition, uses death a lot as a way of bringing reality into our lives, like asks us to face reality, really. So death is certain. And by using bones and skulls, we're bringing in death as a reality. We're asked to face it. We're asked not to shy away from it. And death is an ultimate fear. So using death in this way, or bringing it in and not hiding from it, brings in potentially fearlessness and a sense of urgency. So we need to get on with it. We can't wait for tomorrow or next year because death is certain and our life is a precious opportunity and it's not to be wasted. So these skulls, these bone ornaments are both representing freeing yourself from psychological conditioning and also just getting on with it, throwing yourself into the spiritual life, using the precious opportunity of life. Vajrayogini is wrathful, as you can see in that little picture of her face. So she's got a fierce glare, she's baring her teeth, sometimes she has fangs. So she's not messing about, she's got a fierce look and she's not always pretty. And she's not afraid of the more fiery emotions. Maybe she feels anger, maybe she doesn't direct that in an unskillful way, but she knows how to experience the emotion of anger. And Vidanya brought this in his very powerful introductory talk to this series, saying, you know, if you wake up in the morning and you think, oh, I'm just going to stay in bed a little bit, you think, no, I am not going to stay in bed. I will not let this continue. I'm going to trample on this habit of staying in bed. I'm going to get up and I'm going to go and meditate. So she's representing these wrathful energies that help us to combat our patterns, our habitual patterns that we want to let go of. And she's representing how it feels to sit with that anger without reacting. If we want to destroy negative forces or habits, we need to have energy available to us. And she's trampling, as you saw on the figures, and she's trampling craving and delusion. So she's using the destruction of negative forces as a way to move forward in the spiritual life in order to transform. And these figures are often also seen as her self-created illusions of herself, the ego-based idea of herself. So again, we think we know what we are, we think we know what we're about, but we can trample on that by opening up to the transformation of meditation or of coming along to Sangha night, listening to a talk, using the Dharma to help us to transcend ourselves. There's a little note here that she also has a heart of compassion. She benefits all beings through doing this, and she benefits herself through doing this. So she's not being mean, she's acting from metta, and she knows what's best, and she wants what's best for herself and for all beings. But she is wrathful. So this could be what our freed energies could look like. If we were emotionally involved, naked, if we had all our energy available, if we were free from conditionings and vicious cycles, if we were free from any idea of permanence or security, if we are free from fear of death or fear of the more wrathful or destructive forces, maybe we'd start to look a little bit like Vajrayogini. Or at least maybe we'd feel a little bit like her. Sometimes when I'm sitting in meditation, if I feel anger or resentment, it really is as if I'm surrounded by flames. And so if all this freed up energy is available, it can be used and directed towards our spiritual aims and aspirations. It can be sublimated into our spiritual aims and aspirations, towards transformation in the direction of our highest ideals. So it's not just for the sake of it, it's in order to aim towards enlightenment, towards transformation, for the benefit of ourselves and other people. So you might want to reflect on this form. She has a mantra, you can do the mantra, you can visualize her form, and just see what effect that has for you. A little bit of caution, once I decided to do the Vajrayogini mantra quite late at night in my bedroom, and I didn't sleep. So it can be quite a powerful form to reflect on, a powerful mantra to chant. Yeah, it's great. Okay, but what might activating or freeing up energy look like in our actual everyday life? So maybe we can visualize the form of Vajrayogini if that works for us, but we're kind of going about our lives day to day. How can we free up our energies in this day-to-day life? How can we uncover more energy? How can we activate it? And a clue here is where the Dakinis live. So where might you find a Dakini? And traditionally, they're found in the cremation grounds. So here's a cremation ground. It's not being used. There were some images of ones being used, but I thought I'd stop short of that. That's an ancient cremation ground near a university in India. So cremation grounds are scary and lonely places where dead bodies have been burnt or left to decompose. Vultures and jackals pick at the rotting flesh. So not a place you'd really choose to go to for a nice little relaxing holiday, a relaxing jaunt. But there is a traditional practice of going to cremation grounds to meditate in the dead of night. And this is what Padmasambhava did, who we've been hearing about in the last two talks. And it's a place where he met and taught local spirits and demons, including Dakinis. So he met the Dakinis in the cremation ground, and he taught them the Dharma. He brought them onto his side in the spiritual life. So the cremation ground, it stands for death. And death is, like I was saying, the ultimate fear. So the cremation ground stands for fearlessness. And inhabiting the cremation ground represents facing our fears and all of the heroic and powerful emotions that we need to face our fears. But more crucially, what powerful emotions can actually rise up when we turn to face our fears, when we take a challenge, when we go outside of our comfort zones. So it's not necessarily that we already have the energy to go to the cremation ground. Maybe we just put ourselves there and wait for those energies to arise. And Sangha, the founder of the Triratna Buddhist community, he talks of cremation grounds as being like crucial situations in our lives. So we can try and set up situations that are like the cremation ground for us. So a cremation ground can be a situation of crisis into which you deliberately plunge yourself and in which you are compelled to change. So the Dakinis are found here in the cremation ground because it really is necessary to go outside of our comfort zones to face challenges in order to meet and activate our deepest energies. And we can't just sit around waiting for that to happen. We have potential beyond our current knowledge and experience, and we need to take risks and face going beyond what's comfortable in order to realise potential, find the energy, the qualities that have been there all along, but that yet haven't been needed and they haven't been summoned yet. So we can welcome in change, challenge, progress by digging deeper in crucial situations. So what might this look like? It might look like going on retreat. I thought it was very handy that Vajrayana was both announcing that there's a Sangha retreat. If you've not been on retreat yet, consider coming along there. A place of greater intensity, away from our comfort zone, away from the TV, from the phone, from our usual habits, and just see what comes up there. He also talked about becoming a mitra. Again, becoming a mitra, taking our spiritual life that one step closer to commitment towards it, meeting in a group every week, looking at the Dharma every week, talking about that in a group. That can bring up more intensity, more challenge for us. Maybe it's at work, maybe we take on a challenge at work that we'd normally shy away from, take on a little bit more responsibility and see what we can manage there. Maybe in a discussion group, we're normally a little bit quiet. Maybe we could say a little bit more, or maybe just be more honest. Think about what we want to say and try and lay ourselves a little bit more bare in the discussion group. Maybe do a bit more meditation. Try and meditate each day, see what happens. That can be the cremation ground, the crucial situation for us. So these next steps that we can do, and it's really important to consider what that next step might be. It might not be going on a 3-week solitary if you've not done a solitary before, but maybe it's going on a 3-day solitary. If you've not thought about going to meditate on your own, being on your own for a couple of days, maybe you could try it. And everybody, no matter how experienced they are in the spiritual life, can always take themselves out of their comfort zone just a little bit more, try and challenge themselves just a little bit more to see what energies can be risen up. So yeah, anything where our usual way of being is challenged by the change in our conditions, or where we're asking ourselves to do something that we're actually quite scared of doing. And then we need to dig deeper and rely on our practice, maybe of ethics, maybe of meditation, of our friendships, of our response to myth, ritual, or mantra, so that we can meet the challenge and grow through it. And this might not be easy. It does require courage and confidence. But we can do it, and we're capable of more than we think we are. My personal example for this is that I came to the intro course nearly 10 years ago. I was thinking I need to have a 10-year anniversary party in January. And when I first came into the hall and looked at how many people were in here, I was really freaked out. I was really, really scared. And when we first got into the discussion groups, I had a massive lump in my throat. I thought, how can I possibly talk about my life in front of these 8 people? And then gradually, as time went on, I became more confident coming here to the Buddhist Centre. I started to support the introductory courses. I was given just like 5 minutes to present on an introductory course. I did a short talk on a retreat. And gradually, I've become capable of doing some public speaking. And it's not the best thing that I can do, the easiest thing that I can do. I do really value being able to talk about the Dharma, bring the Dharma to people's lives. But it's not the thing that I find the most easiest in life. And you can see through my kind of being really scared at talking to anybody that I didn't know that it's been quite a journey for me. So if I can do it, so can you, basically. So try the crucial situations, try the things that really scare you. Just take that next step towards something that's challenging and see what happens. So I'm now going to talk about relationships with other people and how the Dakini represents relationships with other people, friendship and companionship in the spiritual life, which in some ways some people might find a bit of a cremation ground. So again, developing intimacy with other people can be a little bit scary. So this is the third aspect, the way that the Darkening Principle can present itself in our lives, through friendship, spiritual friendship, and through Sangha. So the Vajrayana, it cultivated the idea that we can go for refuge to the 3 jewels in a different kind of way than the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So the 3 jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, can be represented by what we can actually have direct experience of. And these are known as the esoteric refuges. So it sounds quite exciting, doesn't it? The esoteric refuges, the secret refuges that only some people can access. That's all of us right here, right now. So these esoteric refuges are the Buddha becoming the guru, so the person that can take you through your spiritual life by giving you spiritual advice, giving you teachings. The Dharma becomes the Yidam, which is the figure that you might meditate upon. So a Buddha or Bodhisattva figure that you visualize in meditation can become the Dharma for you in your actual experience. And the Sangha becomes the Dakini, the spiritual friend or companion. So the esoteric Sangha refuge is the Dakini. It's important to say here that the Dakini has a male counterpart. So I've been talking about the female Dakini all along through this talk, but there is a male counterpart to the Dakini, which is darker. So they can be male. They're normally female, represented in a female form of the Buddha, but you can have darker and Dakinis. So this might be friendship that we have in the Sangha, but not just any friendship. It's friendship that really inspires us in our practice, and it stimulates our experience of our practice. This could be because you're meeting people who've been practicing longer than you, so you look up to them and you realize, oh, there are different ways of being, there are different ways of behaving in the world, and that can inspire you. But it can also be just people that you're meeting here at Sangha Night who've either been coming along to the centre for less time than you or the same time as you. So it's just the possibilities that might arise in communication when you're with this person that is the Dakini. So you can go to places that you can't go on your own through communication, through responding to one another. So it's not the person themselves that becomes your Daka or Dakini, but it's the possibility of change and of inspiration that can arise whilst you're talking with that person that is the Dakini. So maybe you can take risks. You can be open to change and open to developing intimacy with people as you meet them. So maybe take part in discussion groups, listen to each other, ask somebody a question that you feel a little bit shy about asking, and just see what happens, see where the conversation can go, and see if it's inspiring you in your practice, if it's stimulating you in your practice. So yeah, talk, spend time with people who share your spiritual aspirations and spiritual practices so that you can talk about them. Don't be afraid to talk about meditation or different Buddha and Bodhisattva figures, even if you don't think you like them, even if you think you hate meditation, just talk about it. See what happens as you start to try and talk about your spiritual practice. So be the person who will ask other people about that as well. You don't have to wait to be asked about it. You can be the person that asks what moves people, what they find valuable, what they find beautiful, and see where that conversation goes. Preti did this with me the other day. Some of you might know Preti. She's not here tonight, but we were having some porridge the other morning. She made me her Preti power porridge, which I really recommend. And she just asked me out of the blue, so how's your sadhana practice going? So that's a meditation practice that I took on at my ordination. And we'd just been chatting, and she asked me about that, and it really just brought me up short. And I think I started gazing out the window as I tried to answer that question, because it really brought into the conversation something that's absolutely precious to me. Maybe not something that I always feel that connected to, but it was really great to be asked that question so I could reflect on my practice and talk about that with her. It could have been the mindfulness of breathing or the metta bhavana, but it was just really great to be asked that question and to be brought out of myself in that way. And it is scary to open up to people that we don't know, but we can give it a go. We can create these situations, search them out as we might search out a cremation ground or a crucial situation in our lives. So we can search that out in our friendships. So I'm going to look at popular culture now, which might help us know what a Dakini is, and it also might help us know what a Dakini isn't. So there's a paper called Reimagining the Buddha, which has been written by an order member called Subhuti, alongside Sangha. And within this paper, quite straight away in this paper, the idea of broken images is introduced. So a broken image. And this is introduced in the context of how here in the Western world, our imaginations and our response to imagery, to pictures, has been affected by the rejection and destruction of imagery, of religious images in particular, as being seen as heretical within the Christian tradition. So that's a little bit of the historical background there. And this has happened in relatively recent history. So, for example, the pagan gods of popular religion were suppressed by the Christian church, and then later the Protestant Reformation later condemned all imagery to the devil. So this happened in fairly recent history in this country. And the Reformation also led rise to the rationalism that we now live amidst. So the realm of myth and the imagination, in some ways, has been left merely for entertainment purposes. It's been stripped of its higher and deeper meanings. So we still have religious art, particularly in the Catholic religious tradition, but mostly myth and imagination, we come across it in entertainment. That's where we mostly come across myth and imagination. It's not really in religion. I grew up without a religion, but I did grow up with entertainment. And this commercialization of images now, gives us images that once expressed deep meaning, but now are just commonplace entertainments. And I've looked at this idea, and I've looked at what images are attractive to the markets of popular music and TV shows, what images are attractive to me. And I think I found reflections of a Dakini image within this popular culture. So I'm going to show you some now. So for me, these are Dakinis in popular culture. We've got Miley Cyrus there. She's got some kind of weapon that she's destroying the building that she's surrounded by in. She's pretty naked. And she's also sticking her tongue out in a kind of wrathful, kind of menacing way. That's the top two. Miley Cyrus is a pop star. She grew up a pop star since she was tiny. She went through this kind of crazy wild phase, which you're now seeing. And increasingly, her songs are getting more and more dharmic. I'd recommend you check her out. So, and then underneath we've got Beyonce. Some of you might have heard of Beyonce. She was in a girl band, and now she's a solo star. So she's kind of, her hair is disheveled. She's got a kind of animal print on her. She's looking quite kind of, raw. And then my personal favourite is Kate Bush there on the right, dressed up, disheveled hair again. And in that video, she's quite kind of fierce and menacing as well. So these are images from popular culture, and they are really popular. Miley Cyrus and Beyonce are kind of up there, the biggest stars of here and now. They're representing being wild, being free, being spontaneous. But they're quite sexualized images, just like Vajrayogini is in a way. And it's kind of just for entertainment's sake. It's rousing the energy, but it's not really going anywhere afterwards. So what's really important is we're aiming for this kind of freed up, wild energy, but not just in the sense of then being able to do whatever we feel like, whatever effect it has on other people. So we want to be free from reactivity, from our habitual patterns, free from our fixed self-views and self-doubt, but this freed up energy then needs to be directed to what is skillful. We need to understand energy for what it is and what it's capable of, and not just use it for our own personal aims and objectives. The aim in the spiritual life is to transcend the ego, and as we saw, Vajrayogini stamping on it. So what I'd really like to see is Miley Cyrus stamping on a little version of her, which in a sense I think she's kind of got a sense of in her career. But again, I won't carry on going on about Miley Cyrus. So yeah, we need to find ethical, skillful uses of our energy. Freeing them up is only just the start. We need to find a skillful direction to benefit ourselves, but also to benefit all beings. And some of you might have heard of the Titan realm and the Wheel of Life. The Wheel of Life is a Tibetan model of the human world, and the Titans are really violent, competitive beings, and the female people within that realm are very, very seductive, and they're using their sexual prowess in order to kind of conquer other beings. So that's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for competition or for seduction. We're not looking for our own ego aim. We're looking not for our personal gain above other people's. We're looking for freed up energy that we can then direct towards our spiritual life, toward our highest aims. So in the Dakini, the symbolism isn't just sexual, it is sexual. And I don't want to kind of take away the sexual aspect of that, because I think it's also representing the beautiful, the intriguing, the captivating, the fascinating. So this is all really important. What are we fascinated by? What are we interested in? There's a lot of energy in that. There's a lot of power in that. And we need to find that within ourselves and use it in our spiritual lives, all in the direction of our ideals. I've also got images of Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones, which is a TV show that's just completely taken popular culture completely over. A lot of people watch Game of Thrones, and I think it's just really interesting to see this character standing in flames, naked, not harmed by the flames, able to stand completely within the flames but not hurt by them. And she's also just eaten a stallion heart there, so she's got blood dripping down her face. So she's not scared to do the things that are pretty, nasty, really. And again, when I sit in meditation, if I'm feeling angry, if I just tune into what that anger feels like, I'm not reacting, I'm trying not to direct it towards anybody. I just let it course around my body. In a way, I feel like I'm surrounded by flames. And this figure, Daenerys, has helped me to think, yeah, I can stand in these flames of anger, and I can try and transform that anger and direct it in a skillful way. So yeah, that's popular culture. And I think it's really important to see that there is power within popular culture. These popular myths are rousing our primal energies. I wasn't sure about watching Game of Thrones because I thought it's quite violent, it's very sexual, do I really want to watch it? But I have found through watching it, I have got in touch with some archetypes, some deeper energies that are freed up within myself. And I'm a fan of Kate Bush, like I was saying, and I'm very interested in Miley Cyrus's career. But we need to use these things, whatever it is that we're interested in popular culture, our music, the images that we like, the books, the films, the TV series, all the stories that captivate us. These are rousing our energies, but we need to use those energies wisely. We need to direct them towards what is skillful, useful, and beneficial for all. And perhaps we can even find truer representations of this energy, these higher energies, in other myths, in Tantric Buddhism, in the Buddha and Bodhisattva figures, even in the myth of our own lives and in our own experience of ourselves. Where is that energy? It's not, it's being represented there, but where is that energy within us, and how can we use it wisely? So I'm going to end with Vajrayogini there. So if these myths and energies exist within our own lives and within our own experience of ourselves, how do we find it? How do we find that energy within ourselves? So firstly, I ask you to just consider what you love, what really attracts you in life. Consider what energy is awakened within you when you do those things, whatever it is. And see if you can find what higher values that represents, because it's probably a reflection of a higher value. And maybe you can look for the emotional equivalent of that within your spiritual life. How can you bring about that energy, what you love, in your spiritual life, whether it's through mantra, ritual, images, myth, meditation, friendship? Just talk to other people about what it is that you love, what that might represent, and how can you bring that energy into your life. and then commit and devote yourself to that like you might do to your lover. That's my first way of finding your own Dakini. The second one is just to open up to friendship. I just referred to it, but maybe you could find people that you can talk to about your life, talk to about your practices, what's working for you, what isn't working for you. Ask those risky questions that you're not sure about asking or not sure about answering yourself. And thirdly, maybe you can go to the places that scare you. Maybe you can find a cremation ground in your own life, a crucial situation, something that is a little bit beyond your comfort zone that you can willingly take on and see what deeper energies are stirred up within you as you do that. Maybe you can boldly go where you've not been before. Okay, I'm going to end with a poem now, and this poem has been written by my good friend Leela Matti, who is sitting down here. So I talked with Leela Matti about giving this talk because I know that she's been interested and has followed up that interest of Vajrayogini in her life. And I always find communication with Leela Matti to be a bit representative of this Darkening Principle that I'm talking about. We always seem to find new avenues to explore that neither of us have considered before. There's an open, honest, stimulating kind of conversation that I have with her. And I'm very grateful for that spiritual friendship. And she sent me this poem that she wrote after I told her that I was giving this talk on the Dakini. And it's entitled Vajrayogini. Vajrayogini. You arise like a phoenix, where love self-combusts in the white heat of emptiness, and change is everywhere.